course of the week, we'll try to. In the course of the week, we'll try. Shmuel, maybe we could close the windows and block out the outside noise.
Yeah.
Turn it. Is air conditioning?
Yeah.
Oh. So in the course of the week, we'll speak about Hagaddah. We'll try to go through as much as we can and pick out some of the Iker points of Pesach. The first one is that we start off the whole halachas of Pesach begins with the concept of Kimcha de Pisco. Pesach begins with Kimcha de Pisco. That's even before we get to the Hagaddah. The Kimcha de Pisco, which is the idea that we're trying to provide, we provide for the poor people, the Minhag and Klal Yisrael, that we provide for the poor people to make sure that they have what to eat on Pesach. If you look, every community in Israel, it's unbelievable. I don't know what goes on here in Israel. It's unbelievable the amount of food distribution and organizations that are helping people to make a Pesach Seder, to make Pesach is unbelievable. They have tents in Yerushalayim. There are tents that are set up, massive tents. You can get one place, you get potatoes and you get carrots and you get these big bags. I mean, it looks like people are storing up for a war. That's what it looks like. People come in holding these sacks of potatoes. They have one organization that gives shoes at a discounted rate. You go in there with a family with 6 kids, and you go in there and you take shoes for your family and so on and so forth. And the idea is that we want that everybody should be able to sit down at the Pesach Seder and be b'nei chorin and feel that they're b'nei chorin. There's a beautiful tzedakah organization in Israel that's not Pesach, but they do this during the rest of the year. They do a Pesach also, one of the organizations. It's an organization that sells chickens. Let's say a carton of chicken costs, let's say 350 shekels. They'll sell the cartons for 70 shekels each, so that the poor people who order these cartons shouldn't feel that they're getting a handout. If you feel that when you pay for something a little bit, you feel you've bought it, and because they're Jewish, it doesn't cross their mind that it's tzedakah. Because you're Jewish, you figure you really got a good discount there. You got a good deal. So mamish makes people happy, and they buy. They have all week. Every Shabbos they have these cartons of chicken, and the beauty of it is that you could choose your hechsher. You call them up and you say, yeah, I'd like Sheris Yisrael, I'd like Aguda, I'd like Beis Yosef. They have a choice of 3 hechsher in there, and then you get your chickens, and then they have a service secretary who calls you up for customer service to see were you satisfied with the product. So it makes the poor person feel that he's a customer. And so by charging him the 70 shekels, he feels good, he paid for it, he didn't get a handout. You got customer service. I'm sure these are the people who complain more than anybody else, by the way. You get customer service, and that's the idea. The idea is that to do it in a mechobedik way. So Kimcha de Pischa, also the halacha begins with Kimcha de Pischa, that we try to provide to poor people. But why? Why Dafka Pesach? Purim, there's Mataros Levyonim. You don't find this as much by Sukkot, that there's a even little organization. Pesach are the expenses. That's where the kids buying new suits. I just spoke to my wife on the phone. She told me who's shopping for what right now. So I got off the phone as quickly as possible. I'd rather live with hope than confirm the worst. And, I leave my wife a pile of money, and then by the time the plane lands, my first question is, do you have any money left? That's usually. So why is it that Kimcha de Pisco begins, Hilchos Pesach begins with Kimcha? There's a reason for it, and the answer is, the Forshim say that anybody know have an idea, why do we dafka now begin with Kimcha de Pisco? Why dafka now, besides the plain meaning that everybody should eat? Why? What's the connection to Pesach? So the Forshim say like this. The Forshim say that Pesach is the Chag of Emunah. Emunah, we're strengthening our Emunah. Yitzias Mitzrayim, we believe in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashgacha Pratis. HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes over. HaKadosh Baruch Hu watches us and He provides for us. Poor man comes to you, and what your attitude is going to be, you take his hand and you pass it and say, have a little bitachon, have a little Emunah, my friend. Don't worry, it's the Chag of Emunah. All you got to do is have a little Emunah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu will provide for you. The halacha says, don't have Emunah at somebody else's expense. Right? Your Emunah is for you. Your Emunah is for you. When it comes to somebody else, don't you have Emunah for him. For him, you have a $20 bill, not Emunah. Your Emunah is your Emunah. Therefore, Kimcha de Pischa is don't get carried away and all of a sudden become a very big devoted person to Emunah because you understand that this is the Chag of Emunah. It's Emunah, you're right. Now you show the poor people that you have emunah, their emunah is a concrete emunah, your emunah is concrete. You give it to him, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu will provide you back. That's your emunah test. Not to tell the poor person, it's like you have gamzu l'tova. Everybody's heard the concept of gamzu l'tova. So if something negative happens to a person, you're supposed to say gamzu l'tova. So a person bends down to pick up his pen, and he hits his head on the table on the way up. You're supposed to say gamzu l'tova. Gamzu l'tova means we understand that it wasn't wasted, it happened for a reason. Gamzu l'tova, this is for the best. Right? But you never say it to somebody else. You know, if somebody else bends down for a pick up and hits their head on the table, you don't turn to him and say, Gamzu l'tova, right? Don't be a Gamzu l'tova, because then he's going to pick up a chair and hit you and say, Gamzu l'tova. You know, then you'll have a Gamzu l'tova fight. You know, so the Gamzu l'tova, when it comes to emunah, emunah is for me, I'm not going to have your emunah. For you, I have an obligation. Even hishtadlus, which is a very, very tricky thing. How much effort are we supposed to put into our own endeavors in this world, as far as parnasa and health and everything else? We have to make hishtadlut. We have to make our effort. That's a halacha. You have to make hishtadlut from the time that Adam Harishon ate from the fruit. HaKadosh Baruch Hu zeyat apecha tochal lecha. So we have to make hishtadlut. We have to make the effort in order to make our parnasa. How much effort do we have to make? The answer is that whatever the norm is in your society, that's the standard for hishtadlut. If in our society, if a lawyer has to work, I don't know, I'm guessing 10 hours a day, maybe you're laughing at me, maybe it's more closer to 16 hours a day, I don't know, whatever is the norm in your society, that becomes the hishtadlut that a person has to make. So when it comes to anything that is faith related, it's on our own level, we have to make the proper hishtadlut, not more and not less. But when it comes to somebody else, then we have to go above and beyond. When it comes to somebody else, we don't rest until that person has their needs. That, our hishtadlut for them is not limited by the regular rules of hishtadlut for ourselves. That's idea number one. I heard about a guy who came to a Rav, wanted to give money to tzedakah. So he came to the Rav and he said to the Rav, I want to give some money. Is there a poor family? The Rav says, yes, I know of a poor family that needs quite a bit of help. He says, how much do they need? He said, about $5,000. He writes out, he says, who should I make it out to? The Rav says, your brother. Your brother. Sometimes we have to know, there are people around, people need, and sometimes the people are near and dear to us, and that's our effort of hishtadlut. While we do it, there was a man in England who came to, they have a Tomchei Shabbos. Tomchei Shabbos is, the organization that gives out food for Shabbos. Every community has. So a man comes to the Tomchei Shabbos, to the Gabbai of the Tomchei Shabbos, says, I'd like to give you £1,000 for your Shabbos organization. Thank you very much. There's only one condition. I'd like to know which families are going to be helped by the money. The guy says, we have a rule, we have a policy, we don't disclose the families that are going to be receiving. So the guy says, look, I'll give you £2,500, but I think £2,500 entitles me to know where my money is going. And I'm sorry, we do not disclose where the money is going. He says, I'll give you £10,000. That's half your weekly budget. And I think for £10,000, I think I'm entitled to know to see the list of the people who are getting the money. So the Gabbai says to him, listen, I don't care if you give us £1,000,000, we will never reveal the names of the people on our list. So the man says, good, that's what I wanted to know. You see, I've actually lost all my money, and I wanted to turn to your organization for help, but I was nervous that people would find out, I'd be very embarrassed. So now that I see how discreet you are, please put me on your list. So when it comes to this kimcha pitzvah, tzedakah, that sort of thing, we have to help the poor people, we have to help them both physically, we have to help them in a material way, but we also have to help them to maintain their dignity, not to do anything that chas v'shalom will cause them embarrassment. That's idea number one. Okay, after all the preparations, we all sit down at the Seder. And everybody goes to the Pesach Seder. Okay, in the Pesach Seder, if you ever look at the children's books, that's a big mistake, by the way. Those of you who have young children in the family, it's a big mistake to look at the children's books, because the children's books always show Daddy is there, Mommy looks refreshed, the children are all sitting at the table just listening as if they're getting it, and we all know that doesn't work that way. And you read the children's book, you're wondering, what are we doing wrong? The kids are running around the house, I can't get them to sit down. It's what do you call it? So the truth of the matter is like this. What is the purpose of the Pesach Seder? And I wanted to explain, there's a mistake that people make also with young families. There's an idea, it says in the Pasuk, Lo sevaru eish b'chomosh v'otechem b'yom HaShabbat. So I just heard an explanation, Lo sevaru eish b'chomosh v'otechem b'yom HaShabbat. That's supposed to kindle a fire in your homes on Shabbos. Sometimes people make the mistake that all of a sudden Shabbos, they become very enthused about Yiddishkeit and try to get the kids into it on Shabbos, because that's when you see the kids in the course of the week. Lo tevaru eish b'chomosh v'otechem yom Shabbos. It doesn't work that way. The kids, when you come to the Pesach Seder, they don't obviously, sometimes we get all fevered up, the Seder and Emunah, and we're going to give over the tradition of Klal Yisrael now. They might not be as fevered up as we are, and don't expect them to be. They're still kids with the same attention span of about 4 minutes. And it's going to be very, very difficult for them to sit through a Seder. Don't expect too much of the kids, on the one hand. On the other hand, it is called a Seder. Now, why is it called a Seder? We call it a Seder. Seder in Hebrew, anybody know what is Seder in English? Order. Something is ordered, something is organized, right? The Seder is organized, even though it's not, but the Seder is organized. Why is a Seder, the Pesach Seder is called a Seder? Why? Why is it called a Seder? So, there are 3 different approaches, 3 different answers that I saw in the Meforshim. Answer number 1 is, if somebody were to ask you, what is the definition of a free man? What's a classic definition of being free? What would you say? What's a free man? Anybody got an idea? What defines you as being free?
Not dependent.
Not dependent? Choice. Okay, both are correct.
Free of taiva.
What's that?
Free of taiva.
Free of taiva is certainly in there, yeah. What else? In our world, what makes you free? Freedom means your time is your own. If something is governing your time, you're not free. If you have a boss, you're not free. You are accountable to a boss. If you have an obligation, a time-bound obligation, you are not free. If you have a wife, you are certainly not free. I asked the guy once, the guy got married, I asked him after about 3 months of marriage, I said to him, what have you learned in your first 3 months of marriage? So the guy looked at me, he had a dazed look on his face. He looked at me, he goes, don't make any independent plans. Right? That's what he said, which is true, because your time is not your own. Your life is not your own. You are now obligated to somebody else. The definition of freedom means that we are free to determine our own order, our own. Seder begins because now we're going to do things the way we want to do them in an order that we decide to do them. Symbolically, that means we are free, because we are free to do things the way we want to do them. That's why it's called a Seder, number 1. Number 2, it's a reminder, you take a look at the Nisim. Take a look at the Nisim that happened in Mitzrayim. And the Nisim that happened in Mitzrayim, the Dam, Tzfardea, Kinim Arov, Yitzchrias Yamsuf, all these Nisim that were happening. And unless one looks into it, one tries to understand what's going on, it just looks like boom, boom, there were Nisim. It looks like, boom, a boxing match. You had him here, and he had him here, and he had him here. Torah's trying to teach us all the Nisim that happened in Mitzrayim came in a perfect Seder. The Nisim were brought in a perfect Seder. The Seder of Pesach, which is the Seder that we do things in a certain order, it is symbolic of the Nisim that happened to Klal Yisrael in Mitzrayim. Do you know that the Eser Makos, the Medrash Tanchuma says, that the Eser Makos were brought? There are different explanations of why they were brought and how they were brought. The Medrash Tanchuma says that the Eser Makos were brought the way a military campaign is fought. Exactly like a military campaign. Imagine that a country is conquering another country. They're fighting another country, and you surround their city. What's the first thing you do? You poison their water supply. That's done. The next thing you do is you start sounding the trumpets. Tzfardea, they made a lot of noise. The next thing you do is you start shooting in the arrows. Kinim. Then you let the fierce warriors go in. Orov. And as each makkah is brought in a perfect Seder, symbolizing a military campaign. And finally, at the end, you throw in the catapults, which is Borod. Then you send in the massive troops as Arba. Then you imprison everybody. You imprison everybody as Choshech, where the Mitzrayim couldn't move. And then Makas Bechoros is that you execute all the high officials, the people that you've conquered. You execute all the high officials. So everything that happens in Yetzias Mitzrayim was in a perfect Seder. There was nothing haphazard, there was nothing random, and therefore the Pesach Seder is called a Seder. And then there's the third reason, which I feel is probably the main idea of the Seder. There's a father. Yeah, it's still a little warm, but well, it's still a little warm in here. Never give a shiur in a warm room. Never give a shiur in a warm room. On television, they have talk shows. And so, they have one boring celebrity sits there talking to the host. And after that boring celebrity moves over, sits down on the couch, they bring out another boring celebrity. So they happened once on a TV show, don't ask me how I know this, but they happened once on a TV show that they were talking to the second celebrity, and the first celebrity was sitting on a couch, fell asleep. Right, which is only what the rest of us wanted to do, and so the celebrity fell asleep on the couch. So they now have on every television set, there's a stream of cold air that blows out from underneath that couch onto the feet of the celebrities who are sitting there, so they don't fall asleep. And it just won't do on national television. We're trying to make people think that this celebrity is interesting, and the guy next to them is sleeping on the couch. So when you give a shiur, you should just know always better that people complain it's too cold in the room. That's excellent. That's excellent. Nobody goes to sleep when it's too cold. Right? When it's warm, especially on a Sunday morning. So there's another idea here. And this goes to a famous story many of you have heard. There's a bacher who was in a home, and he went off to yeshiva. And he left town and he went to yeshiva. He was learning. And his father decided one day to come visit him to see how he's learning in yeshiva. So his father comes to the yeshiva. I think it was the Telz yeshiva in Cleveland. His father comes to the yeshiva. And he goes straight up to the boys' dormitory room. He looks in the dormitory room, sees his bed is well made, his clothing is hung up nicely, his sforim are in order. The entire dormitory room looks like it's in order. He goes back down to the car, drives to the airport, flies home, and says to his wife he's learning very well in yeshiva. Never spoke to the Rebbeim, never spoke to Yeshiva, never spoke to him. He said he's learning very well in yeshiva. How did the father know? Because if the room is organized, that means his life is organized and his mind is organized. And if the room looks like it's been hit by a tornado, that means his mind is hit by a tornado and his life is like a tornado. So obviously it's not 100% of a standard, but that is a very, very good indication in life. Where is a person holding? You take a look at a person, just the way a person is put together physically. They talk about body language. Just talk about clothing language. They read handwriting. You can tell a lot about a person the way he presents himself. A person who is in a state of seder means that he's in a state of organization. What we're trying to do goes with what the young man said. What's your name? Daniel. Daniel said that, remember we spoke yesterday about getting rid of the chametz. When we get rid of the chametz, which represents the Yetzer Hara is what drives us out of the seder. The Yetzer Hara could interfere. We may have plans, and the next thing we know, our plans are being sidetracked. We're being kidnapped from our seder. Having a seder on Pesach, doing things in an organized manner on Pesach, that is the ultimate lesson that we have managed to overcome the Yetzer Hara. We've managed to push him out of our life, and we are able to do things in the Seder that we want to do them. A person who's on his way to shul in the morning, and he gets sidetracked by the telephone rings. And then again, he gets on the phone, and he starts talking to somebody, he has to do with business. Next thing you know, he's late for davening, because he got sidetracked, because he's no longer got a Seder. By the way, I heard there's a shul in New York, if I'm not mistaken. They actually have a parking lot for the cell phones. Have you ever heard such a thing? They have a table outside the shul. And when you walk into the shul, so they have a table with drawn like a parking lot. They have a parking space for your cell phone. And you put your cell phone with the name on it. You have a parking space. You park your cell phone before you go into the shul instead of relying on everybody to turn off their cell phones in shul. My cell phone has never ever gone off in shul because I don't own a cell phone. It's the best way to live. I don't own a cell phone, and therefore I could still in shul with somebody else's cell phone. I could still go shh, because my cell phone is never going over, because yours goes, no it doesn't. So I actually like when cell phones go off in shul, because usually I'm daydreaming in the middle of Shemona Esrei. When the cell phone goes off, it wakes me up, and I continue to get my kavanah back. But the idea of being sidetracked, the person who is sidetracked, somebody who's going somewhere, that means he broke the Seder. I had guys at Or Sameach. A few years back, we had a group of guys at Or Sameach who were not religious. So they came to the yeshiva for a summer program, and one of the things that happened was Shivasar B'Tammuz. So I went around the room, and I asked the guys if they're planning on fasting on Shivasar B'Tammuz. So everybody said, yeah, we're going to try. We've never fasted, we're going to try. Okay. The next day they came back. I said, did you guys fast? I turned and I said, Mark, did you fast? He goes, nah, I started, but I had to eat breakfast. I didn't fast. Okay. I said, Tom, did you fast? He goes, yeah, the hardest thing I ever did, but I made it through. I fasted the whole day. I said, Ralph, did you fast? He says, Rabbi, I was really going to. I was planning on going to. I'm fasting, but then I was walking downtown, and I passed the falafel shop, and then something happened, right? Just like that. Something happened, right? Something happened means that there's no Seder. That's what something is. Something happened means that the Seder was broken. And therefore, the Seder on Lo Pesach is symbolic of the idea that we have completely eradicated the Yetzer Hara. We are in control of our lives. Now, we sit down at the Pesach Seder, and this is a very big question. It's a fascinating, fascinating answer. We sit down at the Pesach Seder, Kadesh, we announce Kadesh. We never announce Kiddush Friday night. You notice that? Kiddush Friday night, we just start singing, Shalom Aleichem, Eshes Chai, make Kiddush. Kadesh, we make an announcement. A, it's the beginning of the Seder. B, it's a reminder that we are a Mamlechet Kohanim V'Goy Kadosh. Kadesh, the whole Exodus of Mitzrayim, is to get to this point where it's a reminder to us that we are a Mamlechet Kohanim V'Goy Kadosh, number one. Then we get to Urchatz. Okay, we wash our hands and try not to make a bracha. And so the hardest thing in the year is not to make the bracha. And there's always somebody in the house, one teenager, who pretends to make the bracha, right? Baruch atah Hashem, Adonenu melech haolam. You know, he says something in a funny way, and everybody goes, oy, 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 and he, right? There's always one who pretends to make the bracha. And then there's always somebody who makes the bracha. They never make brachas the rest of the year. All of a sudden now they made the bracha when they're not supposed to make the bracha. Okay, that's a lack of seder. All right, so you get Kaddish. Then you get Urchatz. Karpas. Now I don't know what's the minhag in your community. What do you eat for karpas?
Celery.
Celery. Okay, we have celery or carrots, you know, and you eat less than a kazayas. And there's always somebody in the house to remind you less than a kazayas. You know, there's always somebody, you're starving hungry. You haven't eaten all day. You're starving hungry. By the way, you should tell the wives, we started doing this many years ago. It wasn't our idea. We got this advice from somebody else. Erev Pesach morning, so you know, first thing happens in our house, my wife puts up a giant pot of food. Meat, potatoes, chicken, a giant pot of food. Because kids are going to be hungry on Erev Pesach that they are all year because there's no food in the house. You're not supposed to eat. So the first thing is pas b'sala. Give them a pot of food, let them eat, and don't come to the Pesach Seder starving. If you come to the Pesach Seder starving, you got to race to the Haggaddah. You should have a te'ovon for matzah. But if you come there absolutely famished, which many people do, so then you get a kaddish or karpas. So you take your bite of karpas, and you're simply tortured. Because you'd really like to eat, you know, I'm really hungry. That just reminds you of how hungry you are. Then the next thing you know, okay, Hagaddah. You know, karpas yachad, and then we're on to what do you call it? On to Magid, and depending on where you are for the Seder, it's going to take 45 minutes, an hour and a half, 2 hours till you finally get to the food. What's going on over here? I mean, what's karpas supposed to be? What is karpas officially? What would we call it in English? What is karpas? Hors d'oeuvres, an appetizer. Karpas is the appetizer. That's one dandy of an appetizer. You eat an appetizer, then you die of starvation until they come out with the main course. What's going on here with the karpas? So the answer is obviously that if we have a minhag in Klal Yisrael, minhagim didn't come there by themselves. Minhagim don't come by themselves. Minhagim happen to come from their deep sources for the minhagim. So to answer that question, I'm going to ask you another question. Why is it that the Klal Yisrael, on the one hand, this is a very, very, very difficult question to answer. On the one hand, we were told Klal Yisrael were on the 49th level of Tumah. Right? You heard that idea? They're on the 49th level of Tumah. And that if they would have stayed in Mitzrayim one more moment, they would have gotten to the 50th level of Tumah. Okay. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, we're told they didn't change their clothing, they didn't change their names, and they didn't change their language. That doesn't sound like so bad to me, considering they were in Mitzrayim 210 years. I mean, people came to America, and their clothing was changed, and their language was changed, and their names were changed. Yeah. You know, how long did it take? You know, it didn't take 210 years in Mitzrayim. You didn't change your names, language, or clothing. They're still talking Yiddish. They're still called Shmuel, and they're still they're still wearing whatever it is that they. Okay, sorry, not Yiddish. Whatever the equivalent is, Ladino. I don't know whatever the equivalent. They're still talking Jewish. They got Jewish names. They're not Jeff, and they're not Steve, and they're not Alex. They're Jewish names. So what's going on over here? What happened? And that's Mentesh in the 49th level of Tumah. What's going on? So there's two questions. Question number one, what's with the karpas? Question number two is, why is it that they're considered on the 49th level of Tumah? A fascinating answer. Imagine, do you know that Moshe Rabbeinu, there's a medrash that says Moshe Rabbeinu showed up, and everybody saw, Moshe's here, Pakot Pakadati, the Redeemer of Klal Yisrael is here. You know the Medrash said that Moshe Rabbeinu then left and he was gone for 6 months. Moshe Rabbeinu was then gone for 6 months. And then he came back 6 months later and took out Klal Yisrael, started the Nisim. Why? Or he came and he left. What's going on? So why don't you imagine the following? Imagine a person is suffering from chronic knee pain. He's got some sort of arthritis, whatever it is, and his knees are always hurting. Goes to the doctor, and the doctor says there's a new pill. The medical establishment has come up with a new pill. You take this pill, it relieves you of all pain for 24 hours, and there are no side effects. He says, here, I want you to take a pill, I want you to try it, let me know in 24 hours how it was. So the guy takes the pill, and then he comes back to the doctor the next day. He says, oh, it's unbelievable. 24 hours, I was free of pain, I had no side effects, I'll take a prescription. The doctor says, well, I'd love to give you one, but the Food and Drug Administration has not okayed the pill to be on the market. It will only be on the market in 6 months from now. Question. Do you think in the next 6 months his knee is going to feel more painful or less painful than it's been up until now? Why? Why?
He felt the taste of relief.
He felt the taste of relief. And he knows that the only thing that's standing between him and constant relief is some bureaucratic, some guy who's got to sign some papers. He could drive you nuts. In the meantime, my knee is throbbing. Why do I have to? It's one thing if you get used to the pain. It's another thing if I've got the pain and I don't need to be going through the pain. This is ridiculous. The pain is more intense. Isn't that true? So if a person understands when Moshe Rabbeinu comes to the Jewish people, I mean, they're not doing so bad. They have their names, their clothing. It's not true. It's not true. You see, that not changing the names and not changing the clothing could work in your benefit, but it could also work against you. There's a very interesting phenomenon. In Israel, Israelis leave Israel. They go traveling the world. Do you know that more Israelis, statistically, more Israelis become Baal Tshuvas and Chutzlarts than they do in Israel? Isn't that a fascinating thing? Why should you become Baal Tshuva and Chutzlarts? You go to Tibet, you go to West Germany, you go to Los Angeles. Why should you you could be in Israel. You've got it right there. The answer is that when you're in Israel, you speak Hebrew, you've got a Jewish identity, you eat falafel, you say yalla bye, I'm Jewish. I don't need any more. I've set myself into an identity. All of a sudden you go off to West Germany, everybody around you is a goy. And now you feel like, who am I? And then you begin your search. And when you begin your search, you don't stop at speaking Hebrew and eating garinim. You begin your search, and your search takes you all the way. The search takes you all the way to commitment. And that's why it's one of the explanations that the experts in the field give. They have more Baal Tshuvas and Chutzlarts because they started looking for their Jewish identity. The Jewish people in Mitzrayim didn't change their names, clothing, or language. They have a very much a traditional Jewish identity. We're Jews, but we're lower class Jews. We're in Mitzrayim. We're never going to be leaving here. Yeah, there are rumors that one day they're going to take us out, but in the meantime we get whipped by an Egyptian. The rumors are just rumors. And all of a sudden, one day, what happens? Moshe Rabbeinu shows up. Moshe Rabbeinu, do you believe? It's like, do you believe Mashiach is going to come? We go, oh, we all believe. Mashiach, we all believe. Yeah? Did you see the newspaper this morning? Were you disappointed when you didn't see the report that Mashiach's not here? I didn't see it on the headlines this morning. Mashiach still hasn't arrived, right then. Because Mashiach would arrive, it would be a front page headline. Were you disappointed when you saw the headlines? Whatever the headlines were, they weren't about Mashiach, right? Were we disappointed? Well, I wasn't disappointed. I didn't go to sleep thinking about Mashiach. What if Mashiach shows up? Mashiach is here. Oh, wow. Then he disappears. Where'd he go? Where'd he go? 1 second. I got some, I got people I owe money. 1 second. Come back over here. We're supposed to get a relief over here from everything. And Mashiach disappears. And then what would you do every morning? Every morning I turn on the radio. Oh, darn it, it's still Israeli elections. I wanted to hear something about Mashiach. Right? They talk about Israeli elections. Mashiach definitely has not arrived. I want to hear that Mashiach. I want to hear the news report that Mashiach has arrived. That's what I want to hear. That means that once Moshe Rabbeinu shows up, what do you think happens to the Jewish people? The night before he showed up, two guys are sitting there, two Jews are sitting there. And they had a rough day at work. It's like, one day we're supposed to be a Yeshua. Yeah, Zalzaina, Yeshua, Yeshua. Then the next morning, also Moshe Rabbeinu is here. Whoa! Hey, this is it! It's true, he's actually here! Where are you going? Where are you going? I'll be back! And off he goes. What do you think the Jewish people felt for the next 6 months? They're the same way the knee pain would get more intense. Their yearning for the Yeshua became more intense. And as your yearning for the Yeshua becomes more intense, your Jewish identity becomes more intense. The downfall of not changing your name because they have a minimum, a ground level Jewish identity, that ground level Jewish identity is now going to change because now they're going to be yearning for Moshe Rabbeinu. They already saw him, they smelled him, they tasted him. Come back, we're waiting for you. You know that the Mefarshim say that's what we do when we eat karpas? Everybody said that's what karpas is. Karpas is symbolic of getting our appetite started. And once our appetite is started, we can't wait for Shulchan Orech. We can't wait for the food to come out. That's the Yeshua. That means everything we do at the Pesach Seder has a symbolism. Everything we do, there's nothing is by accident. We eat the karpas to tease ourselves. That's exactly what the purpose is. Then we say the Magid, we say Shulchan Aruch, we say Magid, then Shulchan Aruch, then out comes the food. That's the Yeshua, that's Moshe Rabbeinu. Okay. Any questions on that so far? Please.
Didn't Moshe leave because the work got harder? So he came to basically save them? And then he went and spoke with Pharaoh, and Pharaoh's like, you know what, I'm going to make everything even more difficult. They have to now cut everything themselves.
That's according to the Pshat in the Chumash. The Medrash says he disappeared for 6 months. Medrash says he went away for 6 months, and those 6 months caused the Jewish people to yearn even more. That means even if the work got harder, the Jewish people believe the Yeshua is here. The Yeshua is here. Now, let's get out. Especially if the work gets harder, that makes them even want the Yeshua even more during those 6 months. Absolutely. Can you imagine if Mashiach would show up? If he just show up for one day, can you imagine what our behavior would be like for the next 6 months? Can you imagine how we would daven? Can you imagine how much tzedakah we would give? Can you imagine how nicely we would treat our wives? If Mashiach showed up for one time, that's all you need is one day. No posters, no banners, just Mashiach would show up. We would daven and we would, everything would improve. Because now we see that it's really there. Now we see, we believe it, we're all ma'aminim, but now we've tasted it, we felt it. Now we know it's just around the corner. Okay. We go to, what do you call it, halach ma'anya. First of all, gentlemen, halach ma'anya, the poor man's bread. We'd say halach ma'anya. So there are two questions here. By the way, lach ma'anya is the gematria. If you carry out the gematria of lach ma'anya, it comes out to exactly 210. Which is the amount of years that the Jewish people were actually in Mitzrayim. Lach ma'anya is 210. That's the amount of years that the Mitzrayim were, that the Jewish people were in Mitzrayim. So we make a funny announcement at the Pesach Seder. Halach ma'anya, this is the bread of affliction. Kol dichvin yesei v'yechol. Anybody who's hungry should come in and eat. Now, the obvious question is, why are we making an announcement like that when the poor people can't hear us? We're sitting at our table with all the food and all of our best cutlery on the table. We say, "Kol dichvin yesei v'yechol." Did any poor man ever knock on your door? We had 1 year at our Pesach Seder, all of them in the middle of it, some weird old guy knocked on the door. I mean, I had a great time with the kids with that one. Like, woo, Elio Anovi, And also this weird guy, turned out he was just a weird guy who got out of an old age home. He had escaped. He was staying by one of my neighbors. They were staying there by Pesach, and he got out of his house. He happened to knock on our door. But it was good. It was great. Couldn't have been times better at the Pesach Seder. Also, there's a knock. Whoa! The kids were like, whoa! they're looking. And but unfortunately, it wasn't Elio Anovi. By the way, I just heard somebody came to Rav Shteyman. A man came to Rav Aaron Leib Shteyman. He said to Rav Shteyman, "I'm Elio Anovi." Rav Shteyman said, "Really?" Yeah. He says, "Wow, I've been waiting 95 years to meet you." The man said, "Yeah?" He said, "Yeah, because when I was a little boy, the first sugya we learned was an Elam Etzias. We learned Kav B'Dalet Amos, right? Kav B'Dalet Amos, Kabayim B'Shvona Amos. And the Gemara ends Teku. The Gemara ends and I've been waiting for you for all these years. What is the halacha over there? How do we paskin?" The guy, obviously had never heard of the sugya. And the guy was like, oh, and he went out the door. that was it. Another man came to Reb Chaim Kanievsky. He said to Reb Chaim Kanievsky, "I'm the Mashiach. But nobody's going to believe me. I want you to announce it to everybody. They'll believe." Reb Chaim Kanievsky said to him, "Oh, wow." He goes, if you're Mashiach, the Yerushalmi says the Mashiach has a donkey that's made of 100 colors. Mea gavnim. Do you have a donkey with 100 colors? So the man says, no. So Chaim says, get a donkey with 100 colors, then come back and we'll talk. Out he goes. So you know, we make an announcement. We make an announcement called Dichvin Yesa. That's how people handle it. You know, they go, by us, we would start arguing. Why argue? There's a much easier way to do it. You know, just call the guy's bluff. You know, that takes care of the whole problem. They came to the Chazon Ish when the Chazon Ish that saw was alive. So there were these activists came to the Chazon Ish, some political tumult. They came from Yerushalayim to the Chazon Ish and said, you have to do this, and you have to come out with a public announcement. You have to do this, everything over there. So Chazon Ish said, I don't understand. Why are you coming to me? Why don't you make the public announcement? So they said, us? Nobody's going to listen to us. So the Chazon Ish says, so why do you think I'm going to listen to you? So we say, Kol dichven yesei v'yechol, Kol dichven yesei v'yechol. We're making an announcement to the poor people. Where are the poor people? They don't hear us. What kind of announcement are we making? So there are two answers over here. Answer number one, excuse me, answer number one is it's a historical statement. The Jewish people, when they went out of Mitzrayim, they expected to go into Eretz Yisrael the very next year. That's why we say, Hashata hacha la'art shana b'bar Yisrael. We're not making an announcement. It's no different than the rest of the Seder, where we're just saying a historical happening. The Jewish people who left Mitzrayim, they yelled out, Kol dichvin yesei v'yechol. Anybody who didn't bring out enough stuff out of Mitzrayim, come join us. You can eat with us. Kol dichvin yesei v'yechol. It's a historical statement. Not that we're expecting poor people to hear something which they can't hear. Number one. Number two, often there are poor people at our Pesach Seder. Often there are poor people at our Pesach Seder. We bring in people. You know, it's always fun to have the guests who are what we call the winners, right? The upbeat people, the high caliber people. The hard thing is to invite guests in who are not doing so well, or a little down on their luck. So we say in what do you call it? We say in Hashata Avdi, we say this year we are avodim. You know why we're doing that? Again, it goes back to the original thing. We're including ourselves with the poor people. You poor people, don't feel bad. We're all in the same boat together. Hashata Avdi. Right now we're slaves. Next year, Mitzvah Hashem, L'shana Haba B'Yerushalayim. That's the idea of Lachman. Finally, there becomes the big question of, this is the big question of the Seder. The whole Leil Seder is supposed to be a night of aristocracy, and we lean. I still have not figured out how, if I'm leaning on my side, how I get the cup of wine into my mouth without spilling it. It still doesn't work. You know, I don't know, you tilt the cup, it spills over. I'm not quite sure. You gotta get your head on an angle like this. I'm not sure how to do it. You know, it still hasn't worked. And that's the, you know.
Then they have a bed next to the.
Yeah, I have a bed, but even in a bed, try drinking in a bed. You know, I mean, it just doesn't work. It doesn't work. So the real question is that here we are. We're at the Pesach Seder. We eat the best food, and we have a meal, the finest cutlery, and the china, and everything, and they're dressed up, and the family, everything's together. And then we eat what's called poor man's bread. Lechem oni. We eat lechem oni. Why do we eat lechem oni at the Pesach Seder? So one of the answers that's given was Daniel said earlier, that lechem oni shows that we are free from our desires, that we've gotten free from our desires. We eat the hard matzah. Some of your matzah is probably a little softer than my matzah, yeah? Your matzah is you eat your matzah is the soft matzah?
No.
The soft pliable?
No.
Who eats that? Who eats the soft pliable matzah?
Moroccans.
Oh, the Moroccans. Okay, so they have the soft pliable. Oh, you eat the hard matzah like us?
I mean, it's not available.
I mean, people make it, and that's what I've seen. I've seen people make it. You know, but we eat the hard either the machine matzah, the hand matzah, the crunchy matzah. So the question becomes, why are we eating poor man's bread if the whole point of the Seder is to show aristocracy? The whole story that we're free people, aristocracy. So why are we eating poor man's bread? So I saw a beautiful answer. The answer is like this. You see, the mashal of a king. King is walking along the countryside, and the king sees a shepherd. The shepherd's playing a flute. And the king's mesmerized by the shepherd's flute. That's how it always is in the stories. I don't know, the king somehow the kings love shepherds with flutes. And the king goes over to the shepherd with the flute, and he starts talking to him. He's a very clever lad. And he takes him into the royal palace to be his permanent flute. He's got a contract, an in-house fluter for the king. So shepherd plays the flute, and the more he's there, the more impressed the king is with him. So the king takes the shepherd, and he eventually promotes him to become a member of his inner cabinet. And the other cabinet members are a little upset. You know, who is this whippersnapper kid, who's a poor kid who all of a sudden he's a member of the inner cabinet. And as a member of the inner cabinet, he becomes a dominant force. His wisdom becomes a dominant force, so the king takes him, and he promotes him to become the Secretary of Defense of the country. And the people are like, whoa, you know, that's ridiculous, you know. And after a few years as Secretary of Defense, they promote him to be the highest position in the land, other than the king, is the Secretary of the Treasury. And the other ministers are very jealous. So one day the ministers, they can't take it anymore. They come over to the king. They say to the king, listen, you know, he is very talented, and he's very, very good at what he does. But we hate to break the news to you. He's been stealing money from the royal treasury, which is obviously punishable by death. So the king says, impossible, I know him. It's about no, you're telling me, you'll see that there's money missing. So the king gets his royal chariot, and he ride over to the mansion where the shepherd is living. Come into the mansion. King says to the shepherd, listen, there are severe accusations against you. I have no choice but to search your house. I'm going to have to search your house. I'm going to have to search and see if there's any money that you've stolen. So the king goes through the house. He's got a big mansion with a lot of rooms, and he goes from one room to the other, doesn't find anything. There's one last door. And the king says to the shepherd, please open this door, and you will have proven that you're innocent. And then if you are innocent, I'm going to execute all these ministers. Please just open this door. And the shepherd says, I really would rather not. So the king says, yes, I know you'd rather not, but you're going to have to open the door. And the shepherd says, I'd be very embarrassed. The king says, I imagine you'll be very embarrassed. And so the shepherd realizes he has no choice. He opens up the door, and then there's a closet, a small closet. In the closet, there's the old clothing he wore when he was a shepherd, hanging there on a hanger, and this stick that he had when he was a shepherd. So the king looks at him, he says, what's this? He says, look, you know, I rose from rags to riches very quickly, relatively quickly. In 10 short years, I've become the minister of the treasury. And, you know, these situations, sometimes it can go to your head a little bit. So what I do is once a year, or one day a year, I come over and I open up this closet where I have my clothing from when I was poor. And I stand here and I stare for an hour at my clothing, just to remind me where I came from, to keep it all in the proper perspective, that it shouldn't go to my head. So the fortune say, that's what we're doing on Lil Pesach. We have the food, and we have royalty, and we are free, and we're aristocrats. And then sometimes a person can get carried away with that a little bit. Some people get a little too full of themselves. Therefore, Torah says, we put out the matzah. The matzah is the poor man's bread. The matzah is the reminder to us where we came from. Keep it all in the proper perspective. Yes, we're free. Yes, we're doing well. But yes, it wouldn't have happened had HaKadosh Baruch Hu not taken us out. Just remember where you came from. It wasn't kochi ve'otzem yadi. It was because HaKadosh Baruch Hu did it. Therefore, not only the matzah is at the Seder, the matzah becomes a feature, attraction of the Seder to remind us where we came from. Question? Any questions? Okay, we'll continue tomorrow with session.
We would like to thank Dr. Dovid, and then please note we're going to say something.